Hey, welcome everybody to the next episode of Thrive Together, Together's first podcast. I'm Megan Darrow. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the executive director of Together. I'm super excited about today's episode. And in preparing for the episode, I think we could talk about dual language programming and translanguaging, for hours and hours. So we're going to try and keep it short and probably come back with more. But we have amazing guests today and an amazing co-host. So I'm going to have Calo go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Calo Flores, she and they pronouns. I am one of the Clubhouse co-directors that focuses on languaging, on equity, on our, what we're going to talk about today, right? Translanguaging and community outreach and our family liaison. But today's episode, I am welcoming two people that I've known for quite a long time. And I'm going to go ahead and pass that information on to them. But I'll just talk a little bit about each individual. One individual, Michelle, has been mariachi. Has been a mariachi musician for quite a long time. And so she'll talk about that. And we have Wendy Guzman, and Wendy Guzman will also introduce themselves. And Wendy is here to also represent Mexican culture, but in the Aztec dance and culture dynamic. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Wendy. And Wendy, you can go ahead and talk a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, my name is Wendy Guzman, and I use she, her pronouns. I am the Lydia Hawk site coordinator for Clubhouse. I grew up in the Northwest. I was born in California. But growing up, I was in a lot of after-school programs, and which brought me back to working with youth and working at an after-school program. I just wanted to give back and, give the support that I received when I was younger, especially with two very hardworking parents that, had 2 jobs at one time, 3 jobs. My dad would get out of his jobs and go help, his friends with other things, with the housework, with the, car, with other things. So he was always on the go. And so after school programs and teachers at my school really did help me growing up and gave me the support that I needed. So just giving back to the community is really what I want to do, and support the youth in whatever it could be. I am a part of Aztec dance. I've been doing it since I was 18, so 12 years now. It's been a really big impact in my life because it's not only about learning about your culture, but also self-healing and really putting in that time for yourself and wow, this makes me feel great, But yeah, that's just a little bit about myself.
And Wendy is our site coordinator at Lydia Hawk Elementary School in North Thurston School District, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's home right there too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then we have Ishelle joining us via Zoom. Hi, Ishelle.
Hi. Yeah, thank you all so much for having me. My name's Ishelle Chacon. I use she and her pronouns, and I am actually joining everyone today from Seattle. And I, as Calo mentioned, I'm a mariachi musician. Music has always been a big part of my life since elementary school, when I was first able to be introduced to playing the violin. And I was very fortunate that in the city where I grew up, Wenatchee, Washington, which is where I met Calo. We have quite an amazing mariachi program there. So I was able to join the program in 7th grade, which was part of the school curriculum. You could choose mariachi, band, orchestra, choir. And so I made the switch to mariachi, and it's literally just been my life. I am still a practicing musician here in Seattle. I gig every weekend. I have, my community of friends and musicians who are all really, really my family. And I think, kind of with what Wendy was saying, it's just really been a form of self-care I have really found over the years. And My husband's like, are you ever going to stop doing mariachi? Like, I want to hang out with you on the weekends. And I'm like, nope, like signed up for.
Yes.
But it really keeps me grounded and has been such a big part of my life. So thanks again for inviting me here today.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, and I have to give a shout out because Wendy did some Aztec drumming at one of our staff parties, and it was
To
so
celebrate
awesome.
Latinx Heritage Month.
Yeah, and I got after it. It was so awesome and so healing, and I loved your connection to breath work. That like that's part of your self-care and your healing, and I felt that night. So thanks for bringing that to our team and to me. So I'm gonna open up and talk a little bit about my experience with dual language programming where I grew up, and then kind of arc into how Together started to look at languaging and language programming as part of our after school curriculum. So I grew up in Anchorage, Alaska, and Anchorage, Alaska, for some reason is like 20 years ahead of a lot of, especially Washington, in dual language immersion programs. And I was one of the first cohorts of kids from first grade to be in a dual language Japanese immersion program. So I was taught Japanese, but also later on in middle and high school, I learned math and science in Japanese.
Dang.
So it was super cool to be a part of that as a kid, and it was normalized as a kid in Alaska to be learning and immersed in other cultures and language. And as part of that, I actually got to do a homestay in Japan as a middle schooler. Wow. So really amazing experiences, especially, living in a small town, large state, small city, which was the main city. To really experience culture and language, and then also other countries in that way. Alaska now has 15 different immersion programs in their public school system. So
their public school system.
So Japanese, Spanish, Russian immersion, and the coolest, which we're going to talk a little bit about La Cosecha conference, is they also have an Inuit heritage language preservation program where culture and language is preserved for the First Peoples of Alaska, which I think is so rad. So that's
Go Alaska.
Yeah, go Alaska, right? So I grew up, in a school district that really prioritized immersion programming, language programming, but also cultural experiences for students and families, which is, I think, why I'm so passionate about it. Now,
because you saw it firsthand.
Because I did. I saw it firsthand. Of course, the Japanese immersion program was not about heritage language preservation, but, the language programs now have developed in Alaska to be more about heritage language preservation, which I think is super cool. So transitioning to Together and how Together started to explore language programming, first of all, of course, in our development in our equity work, racial equity work, language is such a huge part of culture and of both experiencing culture, but also appreciating and immersing and developing our cultural understanding. And so, I don't know, probably 6 years ago, we had a staff member who was working at Lydia Hawk Elementary School, working with some parents, and they said, we really want our students to, learn Spanish and to celebrate the cultures, all the cultures that that Spanish-speaking humans are a part of, and so it started to develop just in the summertime. And we had a director at the time, Eva Don Shakur, and they were all about it and really made that space. And then we had to really start thinking about, okay, well, if we're going to do this, we need different resources. We need more resources, including both, staff time, staff training, but also the cash to make it to make it happen. And so now it's developed into this beautiful actual, curriculum, way of being within Clubhouse program, thanks to the leadership of Kahlo. And I want Kahlo to talk a little bit about what that looks like now, because we're super proud of it.
I know. Yeah. I love it. I have to go off my notes for this because I can really get carried away. This is like my baby, my passion, Mm-hmm. So, as Megan was saying, languaging in general is really complicated because a lot goes into communication, right? Humanity constantly is trying to evolve in ways that we communicate, and language creates barriers or create bridges. And I think what we're trying to do is create many bridges. Our focus is translanguaging. So many people, a great example of translanguaging is like if a student, like for example, Wendy and I both speak Spanish. So if we're doing an assignment and it's in English and I'm like, hey, Wendy, ¿entendiste lo que preguntó la maestra? Did you understand what the teacher asked? We're translanguaging right there in the sense that we're doing our stuff in English, but we're communicating in Spanish. Or some people also call it like Spanglish, right? So like when you mix up two languages. And the very basic of the basics of translanguaging, the way that I see it and how I visualize it is many people have like, there's a river in the middle and land on each side. People are trying to create bridges to the other side. Okay, let's learn English really well, reading, writing, speaking. Let's learn Spanish really well, create another bridge. Russian, whatever, like as many languages as we can. However, we do not do the connection of connecting those bridges within each other. So we need to connect those bridges along as well so children can translanguage and they don't have to wait to get across the river to be able to, then go to the next bridge or whatever. Like we are just translanguaging, building bridges through languaging. And so it took a lot of time to come up with what we should do. I think we spent about 5 years doing a lot of trials, thinking up different methods, talking about like pedagogy and like what we're like wanting to dive into, what the impact does for the community, for the students, short-term and long-term, like what are our objectives, our mission, our vision. And then finally, sometime last year after La Cosecha, La Cosecha is a dual language conference that happens in New Mexico. When I got back from that, it clicked. We can't be a dual language program because we don't have all those tools that we need.
Yeah. Or the kids. Or the kids. Long enough.
Right? Yeah. Or the staffing and all that stuff. We can't just put it all in because we don't have that. And it's not on us, right? We need support from different places. So we're like, okay, we can go from dual language to like bilingual. But what does that mean, And so it's like redefining all these things. And finally, I got to a place where I was able to create this curriculum, and I call it Árbol. And we'll be talking about Árbol in a little bit. But I wanted something that children can identify with, can relate with in regards to culture, can feel rooted in themselves, in their culture, in their identity, in their language, in their history, and in their future. And they can like move forward, being able to communicate with each other and henceforth creating empathy, sympathy, compassion, understanding the differences of cultures, working towards an anti-race, like anti-racism community. Like, we want to make sure that students can see each other, can understand each other. And we have an after-school program that is amazing because many of our students speak several different languages. We have students that speak Mam and Canjobal, which are Mayan languages. And we have obviously Spanish. We have students that speak Tagalog. We have students that speak Russian, Japanese, all these different languages. So Spanish is the start of a multilingual, soon-to-be multilingual after-school program. However, the reason we chose Spanish is because we have the majority of our staff on our team that has that skill already, that translanguages through their own experience. And now we're just helping them understand that what they have within them are skills, and we can move these skills forward to the students. And one of the ways that we started off this last year was actually by inviting Ishel over, actually both, because, I'll talk about Wendy when we invited you as well, but we invited Michelle over, and Michelle came. We were able to purchase 20 violins and 20 guitars for our almost 200 students, right? It's a big deal. And I was like, Michelle, I need you, friend. I need you. I'm trying to do some work here, just like it was done with us, like, I need you. Can you please help me? Can you put some people together? Can you tell me who? Like, I will find the money. We will pay you. Like, we will do whatever we can. Can you just come and teach our students about mariachi? Can you show them how cool and badass you guys are? Can you? And I was hesitant because, that's a very intimate part of a culture that it's some students will either like it or they'll just disconnect from it. And it was the most beautiful surprise to see that our students were obsessed.
Yeah.
They were obsessed with the vestuario, with the charro outfits, with the songs, with the instruments, with the voices, with the history. We had Chava, who didn't speak English, who was just doing everything in Spanish. And Michelle and Manny, were the other two people, were just languaging it up by like interpreting, translating, translanguaging. And the kids, it was like if Chava was speaking their language. Spanish and not knowing Spanish wasn't even a barrier. Mm-hmm. It was the whole energy, the dynamic that was being shown. And I thought that was beautiful. And they want more. Mm-hmm. Right? And so that was the best part. And then Wendy, the first time I was a site coordinator at Lydia Hawk Elementary, like 5 years ago, I was like, immediately, I was like, we need to do something. And I'm like, I know an Aztec drummer. So I brought Wendy over with her sister and her mom, and they just came and taught the kids how to create some Aztec, like sonajas?
Sonajas, drums. We did our own little headband.
Yeah.
We did a whole workshop.
3 days.
Yep.
3 days of workshops.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we did a presentation for the parents.
For the parents. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The unfortunate part was that we didn't have a lot of parents show up for their kids.
No, but we had food.
Yeah, beans. So that's a little bit about like what we've done recently, right? So I get excited. So I'm going to pass it on to Megan so you can come and bring me back.
Well, yeah. So I'm like, yes, let's bring it back. So Michelle, tell us a little bit about what it was like in Wenatchee growing up in a family and a school district who, were doing mariachi as part of your curriculum.
Yeah. Honestly, it was a really amazing experience to be a part of. And I'm so thankful and grateful that, Wenatchee did have that resource available to us. My dad especially has always been very, very passionate about mariachi music. And I think that's something that a lot of students can relate to. Every weekend you're cleaning your house as a family and your parents are playing mariachi music. Like that's such a normal thing. I'm sure Wendy and Carlo can relate to that. Oh, yeah. And so when I started playing mariachi, it's kind of funny, but I think this is like super important. I hated it.
Yeah,
like I'm like, oh, I don't want to listen to this. Like, what is this? I listened to this at home. Like, no, my dad forced me to be in mariachi. I didn't want to do it. I wanted to continue with orchestra. But little did I know it would be my life. But I think when we're young, we don't really understand like how important and how much you are connected to your culture when you try something out that's new. And, when we went to go work with the clubhouse students, it was, Carlo, first, it was just amazing that there was so much support. For Chava, for example, Carlo mentioned he didn't speak a word of English. And it's like, no, don't worry. Like, we want that. And just that kind of support is exactly, I think, what students need. It's just the importance that's placed on different cultures. And it really meant everything to me to have a program in Wenatchee, as I know the students at Clubhouse have. And it's literally just my life. So I couldn't be more grateful to have a program like that that's still available to students and continuing to spread and grow in different school districts. Even here in Seattle, there's a lot of interest in wanting to start mariachi programs. And so we know the want is out there, and having the support to be able to do that is everything.
Amazing. Yeah, well, I'll say for sure, like when I think about language and as a kid learning a new language, that music was such a key part of like, you know, the repetition and learning music. And I can't speak Japanese very well anymore, but I definitely know the songs. I will spare you all, but I know head, shoulders,
you got a
knees, and
mic right in front of
toes,
you.
like in Japanese, right? Like I will sing all of those songs. That's about as far as it goes. But, you know, music is not, it's, you know, culture, like in a beautiful, you know, with language, with dance, right? All of it. And I love that connection, and that, you know, Kahlo, you had the foresight to like bring that as some of the first steps in languaging.
But
in
see,
Clubhouse.
It's so beautiful because I was able to foresee that because I was too in that mariachi program in Wenatchee. Like I saw that firsthand, as just like Ishelle did. You know, I played trumpet, and
Yes, you did. I love it
back.
so much.
You know who taught me the trumpet? It was
see some
Ishelle's
videos.
brother.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, shout out to your medicine.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it was interesting because I too had so much shame, right? And so it was like after that shame of like my language and culture, and seeing how cool it was to like get down with the trumpet, and like then like learn that I might be able to sing a little, you know, like whoa. So after all that stuff, I was like, this is really cool. I can now read, write, listen, sing, play music in a whole different language. Yeah.
So, Wendy, tell us a little bit about how you came to the Aztec group and the importance it's held for you.
Well, growing up, I really didn't have too much like influence, you know. My parents were always like super busy, you know, so it's like my culture was there at home, but it wasn't really like explored, you know. Like I didn't know much about Aztec dancing. I didn't know about indigenous people of Mexico. I didn't know that there wasn't just Aztecs and Mayans. There's some other people. There's other categories, you know. Until I was like 18, and I put it in myself like, okay, we actually went to the farmers market in downtown here in downtown, Olympia. And the first time I saw an Aztec dancer live, they were from Utah, and Danzaquetzalcoatl, that was their name. And we went up to them and we're like, oh my God, me and my mom, we were like, oh my God, like we were like it was starstruck. Like it was like we want some of like part of this. Like what could we do? And like, well, we're from Utah, you know. We're looking to start other groups in other states. So we got with Marta. Marta was one of the leaders of the group. My mom was the other one. And we all got together. And we just formed our own dance troupe. And we just, you know, put it out there. Like every time that we perform, like join our group. Like it doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter if you have 2 left feet. Like it doesn't matter. Like join. It's all about what you feel. You know, it's like, and like that was like the main thing for me, was like the feeling that you get from it, like the connection between each other. And I mean, at first you're like worried about the steps and whatnot. But like once you get that down, it's just like, it really is like a different experience. And after we got our group together, we were able to go to like reunions in Utah, and they had already made other groups. So it was like a whole bunch of people, like 200 people in this huge circle, like all dressed up and dancing together and like vibing with each other. It was like complete like different experience. It was like, whoa, like that just made me even more like get into it. It's like, I don't ever want to let this go. Like this is me, and like this is where you just feel it. I don't know, it's a feeling, you know. Yeah. That's how I got into it. But like even now, I'm not a part of a dance group or anything like that. I'm even having thoughts of like making my own, you know, and like, I don't know, it's just, I want to continue it, but it's putting it into like different ways, like with our site. Like
I know a whole bunch of kids that will probably
for sure,
like 200 kids
about it
available.
200 kids available. That's right.
Only one of me, okay, let's make it.
Well, you said we have a whole group right here.
Oh, for real.
Yeah.
Like we can even make like a little together practice going or something.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? Like
see?
Yeah,
for real. Like it's all about vibes.
Yeah.
You know, but yes, that's how I started out. Was actually just seeing it live and like, okay, like what can I do to be a part of this?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and when I hear us all talking, I'm like reminded just of the other podcasts we've talked about community and building community and like what we see and what we hear from kids needing, right? In how much cultural expression and cultural identity and feeling supported in exploring your culture and finding ways to explore where you come from and who your people are and feeling connected is just so important. And when schools and when adults get that right, how it feels, right? How it feels in your body, how it feels in your community, and, you know, those spiritual experiences with 200 people, right, that share that same love and some, you know, some cultural connections and heritage. I just love it so much. Woo! I love it.
And I want to say,
I
like,
love that
the
we're doing it.
experience that comes with that, too. Because, like, Ishelle, how many, like, famous Mexican artists have you played alongside with, right? Like, how can you talk about, like, your experience on that? And like,
I mean, I could ask you the same thing, Kalu. Not only have you
I heard there was some fangirling happening at one point. Yeah.
I'm shy.
Kalu definitely sang with an artist. And I think that's part of
let's just say I cried on stage. I didn't sing. I got choked up and, you know, I cried.
Yeah, but I think that's so cool. Like, I mean, I think, you know, through music, through, you know, we just are able to have these like different experiences. Like you're on the stage with people who are professionals, who people know. I've had friends like send me pictures of like, is that Ishelle on stage? Like, yeah, that was me. Like I was accompanying this artist. Like, and our friend Chava, who we've mentioned before, he's been shared the stage like over, I don't know, like 50 times, I'm sure, and really great at documenting it. But it's just a really cool way to connect with people in the audience too, see you doing something different. Even my group of friends, they're like, what, you playing a mariachi? Like, that's weird. Like, I've never met anyone who does that. And we're so like ingrained in this like special part of our culture. And even like as a Nasdaq dancer, like not everyone does that. And so it's cool to be able to share that in whatever capacity, teaching or learning alongside or performing in front of people. It's really, really unique and cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it is. I also want to hold something up here that when I talk about what Clubhouse is doing around our work here is, you know, people are like, oh, cool. So you're teaching kids Spanish, right? And they think about their experience in high school, like with their book, right? Learning Spanish for the first time, right? And I'm like, no, that's not what it is at all, right? And so I was reading an article recently about our Washington State Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, who I saw at Starbucks this morning. He has made a goal for Washington State to transition to dual language programming by 2040, right? That every district in our state by 2040, still quite behind other states, he wants dual language programs to develop, right? And I was just reflecting just now about, I hope that when they're developing, which I'm going to put a plug right now, Chris Reichdahl, if you are listening, Kahlo should be on the planning committee, right? That there should be a lot of talk about the other experiences other than just learning the language, right? That there are cultural experiences and music and dance and drumming, right, as part of that experience for kids. Because I think learning language is just one part, right? But actually learning about culture and feeling connected and affirmed is what we should be doing. In schools for kids.
Definitely.
For sure. And for all those people, like I wrote it here just so I make sure, for all those people wondering, like, what is that we're doing? You know, what are we doing? Like I put here, equity, justice, and love. And we're teaching, learning, engaging, and being in community with each other to learn about diversity and inclusion and the evolution of language and cultural awareness within the story of our Clubhouse program. That's what we're doing. And that's how we're teaching youth Spanish, because we're letting them see the beauty of the Spanish language, so that opens the path to all these other languages and all these other like cultures, and they can see the beauty of languaging and cultures and life, right?
Yeah.
What was our next question?
I know, right? I'm like, we went off on tangents after tangents.
I told
So
you.
it's fine. It's fine. So I actually want to hear from Wendy and Michelle and you, Kahlo, about what your experiences as a student was with bilingual education, and if you experienced it at all, and if you had any access to language enhancement or cultural awareness. I mean, we heard a little bit about mariachi, but even before then, like, what was your experience?
Okay, we might have to repeat that for Michelle, but do you want to go ahead and start?
Yeah, I could start. When I moved to Washington, I didn't know any English. My first language was Spanish. And I feel like because I was like such a shy little kid during school time, even in kindergarten, like I wasn't really targeted as an ESL student. I learned English by myself, and of course with the help of like the school and everything, the songs, you know, the teachers, you're like, it really, like I still remember a specific song, and Garfield, that was my elementary school, and like I love Garfield because that's like one of the like they had so many after school programs, and like the little song was went the little green frog one day.
Oh, that's a good one.
And you know, honestly, like I even taught the students this last week. I was like, because that was like one of the things, like it just sticks with you your whole life, you know. But I didn't have like English as a second language teachers or anything like that. But however, I did, my brothers did, and it really affected them in a negative way because they were taken out of their regular school time, their regular class time to go learn this other thing in this other program. And when they came back to their class, they had missed out on all this stuff, but still expected to perform the same.
And make up for it.
Work harder for it in a way. So like, yeah, like these support programs are, I guess, like they're available to everyone, but are they really doing what they need to do, what they're planned to do? You know, are they helping the student, or are they making it harder for them to succeed?
Yeah. When you moved to Washington, did you have any teachers that spoke Spanish?
No. All my teachers were either English speakers, or I did have like a Chinese speaking teacher, but she spoke English too. I didn't have any Spanish speaking teachers.
Do you want to ask Michelle?
Yeah, Michelle, my question was, what was your experience as a student with bilingual education, and your experience with access to language enhancement or cultural awareness? Like, what was your experience as a student? I mean, outside of mariachi, once that happened in high school.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I actually was recruited. I don't know if recruited was the right word, but maybe like selected or something, to as a middle schooler to actually support some of our English language learners who spoke primarily Spanish. So I thought that was a pretty cool experience to be able to like support as a peer in the classrooms.
Yeah.
And then, of course, through mariachi, learning Spanish, or learning more Spanish, and connecting to Spanish through music and lyrics and stories was always a really neat experience. And then I heard the last part of the conversation here about like just kind of like what like teachers and support that I experienced. My French teacher actually was fluent in Spanish. And as Wendy was kind of talking about not having that in school, it really just made me think that like my French teacher was actually my favorite teacher in high school. And I think that because he spoke the language, he was very like, traveled the world a lot and spent a lot of time in Mexico, I really felt like there was a connection that we were able to make, and not just me and him, but with like all of his Latino students. Really, like he was everyone's favorite teacher, and I think part of that was because he spoke the language, was because he in class he spoke to us in Spanish, and I think it just really made us feel like we were at home, like we were able to connect in a different way. And maybe our English speaking friends might have felt a little left out, but it was just a really unique experience to be able to have someone like that like just made us feel like it was a part of home when we were at school.
Yeah, I love that. And Kahlo, how about your experience? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I came to the U.S. when I was 6, and it was really heavy because there was no Spanish-speaking teachers at all. I went to an elementary school by the name of Rock Island Elementary, and most of the students, Rock Island Elementary is a mirror of Lydia Hawk. And most of the students, I would say, were Latinx or BIPOC students, and I learned English through an English-speaking teacher who the school would start 7:15, so I'd be there around 6:15, 6:30 in the morning, and spend the whole time just listening to her in English and sounding out what she was saying with like books and all these things, songs. I learned the piano, so she would teach me like A, B, C on the piano, and then I would learn songs and sing them with her. After school, same thing. I was never put in an ESL class. I tested out of that within the first few months of learning English. And it was really interesting because I don't know how to label that experience yet. Even with my own experience now, I still haven't reflected enough because I feel like diving deep into that's gonna open up some other stuff. So that was how I started, and then I was heavy into soccer. And I mean, that was since like first grade that I was like put into all these like soccer things. And it just so happened that I usually was the only Latinx person on the team always. Yeah. Always. All the way up to varsity, there was one other person. There were 2 people, but one other person that was from Honduras and born and raised in Honduras, and English was their second language. So growing up, I was mainly around only English-speaking friends, teammates, classes. So I was put into classes that were like, I guess, in elementary and middle school, like AP version, which really was just one of my friends who is now a medical family doctor in Seattle, and a couple other people. And so it was a lot of like students that only spoke English. So I didn't have that support.
Yeah.
Until I got into mariachi. And that was really hard for me. I was a band student. And going into mariachi, I forced myself to do that because like I wanted to understand why all these Latina girls were dancing to Duranguense, and what the heck is that? You know what I mean? And I saw, and I was like, why don't I feel that? Like, why do I feel like I want to do that, but I don't even know anything about that? And as soon as I put myself in there, I just discovered who I wanted to know about, like who I wanted to be. And then now I'm here as a director doing the same thing to the students, so they don't feel shame and they like can get into that Duranguense. So like not Duranguense, you know what I mean? But like, you know, they can do this early on instead of, you know, later on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have so many thoughts. First, I want to give a quick shout out to Dr. Jose Medina, who I hope will listen to our podcast. Yeah. Because we listened to his, right?
Yeah.
Because I got to go to La Cosecha last year in Albuquerque, New Mexico, with Kahlo and Kyra, and who's our other clubhouse director. You know, Kahlo was like, you have to go. Like, you have to go.
No
you
choice.
have to see what I'm thinking. Like, this is, 3 days of my brain
Yeah.
in lots of different rooms, right? Which is kind of how Carla's brain is sometimes.
All the time.
Yeah, all the time. So,
In 3 different rooms.
it was incredible. I mean, shoot, I learned, about Alaska's language programs and like really got to connect to why Alaska did that. But translanguaging, like you said, was for me was this new thing. And always knowing that learning a second language is an asset, right? We know, like from brain science, that anybody who is learning and acquiring more languages, right, their brains are growing, and it's incredible, and you're better at all kinds of things, right?
Literally.
Math, science, right? It's forcing you to use both sides of your brain in ways that no other subject does, right? And I think a lot of that's because it's activating, right, culture, love, all these things. You're having to stretch your mind, not just learn something, right? And Dr. Jose Medina talks about translanguaging on his TikTok channel, and I love it so much.
Follow him.
And
he's funny too.
He's funny, and he does it, and he's just the best. But he talks about how a lot of times we don't see that as an asset, and there's a lot of shame around, when you're like, oh, I forgot the English word for this. Like, just say the Spanish word, right? And I love that he talks about it and how much we should be modeling that for students and normalizing it, because it is amazing that your brain is picking from the multiple different languages, right? Because I will say again, because as a white lady, right, I was like, yeah, of course, like Spanish isn't a lot of the kids' first languages, right? They have other languages from within the vast amount of cultures and countries that speak Spanish, right? And, as I've come to learn that, and just how many languages and how much language skill students have, right? They might be speaking a totally different Spanish in their home. And then in the United States, there's a general Spanish that we use as like the get by Spanish, right? And then there's English too. And you're like, that is incredible that a kid is translating and translanguaging all day long, right? So to have adults in their life who have been through that, right, have found ways to connect to their heritage language, and feel comfortable and, and proud, and to have that in a space like Clubhouse is just, boop.
It's my cup of tea.
It's my cup of tea. I love it so much, right?
I love
it
it
so
definitely.
Much. Yes.
It makes an impact.
So I have 2 more questions, and I know we're probably like at the end, but I want to ask this question, which is, why is it important to learn about your own culture and language? And you all have talked about how you've come into and learned and felt connected. And how can we continue to promote that in schools?
You want to start, Shell?
Sure. Yeah.
It's a hard one.
I think it's so important. I think it's a way for us to learn about ourselves, to learn about our family, to learn about our history, to be able to connect with people in a different way. Even just, within my family, I feel like connecting with with my culture through music specifically has been, it's been something that's just brought my family closer together. And I think about like at a performance and my dad's, seeing me on stage and clapping with a big smile on his face, and se está echando unos gritos, like giving like the Mexican yelp or, yell.
Yodel.
Whatever it is.
And I'm like, I don't know how to say it in English. But it's just like a sense of pride that, my family has. And it's a sense of pride that I have when I'm doing something that is just like such a part of my culture. And so I think being able to share that with youth, and I mean, kind of like what Carla was saying earlier, like the earlier we can do that, the better. The when we're young, like we might not think of it that way. We might not think like, oh, I'm connecting to my culture. Oh, I'm finding like a form of self-identity. But all of that is happening within us. And as we get older and we start to like reflect on the parts of our lives that made like this huge impact, we think about these kinds of moments, the moments of, you know, students learning this like Aztec dance, or students, you know, picking up a guitar and playing a song that they've heard before. I think all of those are super important and just like help us become well-rounded individuals who are like so in tune with our culture, our identity, and with the community of people who share this passion and who want to learn about it.
Love it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like over here, just like, yes.
Yep.
What about you?
Do you guys have anything to add?
What was the question again?
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding.
The importance to learn about your culture and language.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
I feel like it's important for like you just as a human being to like learn about yourself and like do things that you like to do, you know, and what brings you happiness. And a lot of that is connecting to like where your family is from, you know, and, you know, even doing like little things that maybe your grandparents or your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents used to do.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh man, my grandma from my mom's side used to do this like back in the day, but it got lost in somewhere in between, you know, from here to there. My grandparents, they were always like, I've always wanted to do that. Like when my grandma saw me dance for the first time at the Washington Theater, she was so proud of me. And it was just like, I've always wanted to do that, but I couldn't, you know, and just like experiencing the experiences that they wish they had is just like, it's like huge. Not only for like you as yourself, like if you don't know where you come from and stuff, but for other people to know, to give the influence to other younger students, I guess, and so that they grow up accepting other people in their community.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of moments in my community where I feel uncomfortable even going to the store, you know, where it's just like people are like watching me and stuff. And I'm like, I'm not going to do anything bad. I'm not going to steal. I'm not going to, you know, but like, why are you following me around?
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like creating like that community where everyone is accepting of each other and comfortable with each other, even when you go out to the store, when you're walking out on the street, you know, like that to me is like is important. Also is like learning yourself and showing other people that you're comfortable with yourself, but also other people like accepting your culture and like accepting you and accepting like you're not all the same, you know. We don't all come from the same place. We don't all are raised by the same parents, you know.
Yeah. There's beauty in that.
Yeah. And I'll just add on just a little bit because I know we're about to conclude our podcast here, and so I'll pass it to Megan after this. But I think it's important because the school to prison pipeline is it's present, right? We see it every day. I see it every day in my work. And doing programs like this, having after school programs like this, music, dance, theater, all these other things keep students involved, engaged in things that they might not have access to because their parents don't know, because their parents didn't have the education or the awareness to put them in these community programs. And so it'll reduce things already. Like it'll reduce the number of like school to prison pipeline kids going in there, right? Kids joining gangs, kids getting in trouble, kids doing whatever. That's one. Second, when it comes to like language as itself, I believe that because of colonization and all these things that have happened in the history of humanity, we've been oppressed linguistically. We have always had this linguistic oppression. Spanish is not my first language. It should have never been my first language, but it's my first language now. Right? Who knows what my first language would have been. But so my job is to see my focus is taking linguistic oppression and the power that I have and working towards linguistic justice and liberation. That's what I'm doing. And then the last little bit is really just showing our students their potential without limits, how to step into their own power and then empower others. That's it. like that's what we're doing. And if I would have been taught that, I'm 30 and I'm barely stepping into all this power. So imagine what would have happened if I was in elementary school and all of this would have already been taught to me. Where would I be at 30?
Exactly.
So that's it. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Liberated spaces, man.
Liberated spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Also, I just want to pinpoint on our notes, Kahlo just wrote equity, justice, and love. And when I read that, I mean, it's just, that is it.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Yep. We spent a whole hour to just say equity, justice, and love.
Equity, justice, and love.
All right. So we end our podcast with one question that I want everybody to answer quickly, which is, what does building community as an act of resistance mean to you? Wendy, I'm going to have you start.
Okay. Okay. I was going to cheat. Well, no, I'm just kidding.
No. No cheating.
Okay. Well, no. It's all about fighting what is the label that's put onto you. I feel like what it is. It's like pushing that and be like, no, like I get to choose my label. I get to choose what I want to be. I get to choose, and being able to just like express that to the students and be like, you get to choose who you want to be.
Yeah.
That to me is just it that to me is like the resistance. Like, don't let anyone tell you who you are or what you can do. It's like you are your own master, you get to, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And just being able to just like express that. And I don't know, I guess I'm just babbling now.
No, I love it.
Yeah.
Ishelle, how about you? Building community as an act of resistance.
Yeah, that's that's beautiful, first of all. But I think about the things we do that make people just a little bit uncomfortable, and how we can push, how we can continue to push, to educate, to involve people to build a like really strong like community, a really strong society. I think about how, even in some places now, but I think even a couple years back, and I'm always coming back to music, but a couple of years back, you didn't really see a lot of, like here in Seattle specifically, like educators like super interested in starting a mariachi program, for example. Where now I just attended a meeting with like 20 educators wanting to learn how can we get this started in our schools. And so that's something that I think is really beautiful, where before it might have just been like a little bit uncomfortable, like this isn't my culture, like I don't know how to do this, where now it's like let's like help us, how can we do this, So I think that's just like a perfect example of just like building community for like a beautiful cause. That before, I think it was just, there was a little bit of
Hesitation,
yeah, to do something like that. So I think that's kind of like an outcome of how it can be like an act of resistance, of like building community.
I love that. I love what you said, because community isn't always comfortable, right? I mean, it isn't about being comfortable, right? Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Kahlo, do you have anything to add?
Okay. I work with students, but now I'm helping our staff do the work with the students, and I get to be a part of that. I'm shifting my focus. How can I build community as an act of resistance? I'm focusing now on the adults, on the parents of our students, because they didn't get the same education that we're about to give the students. So I'm focusing on them. My resistance is them. If I get them on the same page, if I teach them about social and emotional learning, about empathy, about how to communicate with their students, their kids, we got a whole community, not half.
Yeah.
I
love it. Love it. Okay, well, that's it. Thank you both. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Ishelle, for coming and sharing your love.
Gracias.
Yeah, gracias.
Thank you for having us.
And I just had a great time talking to you all. So that's it for this episode.
Yay!
Yeah, Paula, Wendy was so nervous.
I'm
this
still
is our
nervous.
first time again. So
We're just better
awesome
together.
job. We're better together.
Yeah.
We're just conversation on the couch, right?
Yeah.
So I hope the
With the
listeners
microphones.
tune in next time and have a great day.
Adios.
Adios.
Bye.
Bye.